Man, things are just so insane these days. You ever think about that? Just like how there's, maybe from a political standpoint, there's no middle ground anymore. It's either like extreme right or extreme left. And I'm not a political person at all. I think it's a distraction from the much larger issues at play. And that's really why I think it's very important to focus on something like demographics, because demographics are going to tell you why things are so insane these days. Really, what I'm uh, saying is that, look, as your population sort of gets older over time, and that's what's happening in the United States and really across all these developed countries, you end up having these policies that cater to the masses. And if your population is just, getting older over time, and more often than not, these older individuals and households just have more assets, uh, then you are going to have policies that really support that particular group because of things like the wealth effect, which basically says, hey, look, as long as the value of your assets are going up, then you're going to continue to spend, and spending equals jobs. Remember, spending equals jobs. So look, that's what's really happened in the United States, and I think people have this idea that it's one party or the other party's fault, and no, it's really just we have these distortions of failed policy choices that have accumulated over time, and it's created a lot of bad behavior as a result, and extreme inequality, which is why something like populism is so you know, really rampant these days, because more often than not, it's really like these younger groups who are just kind of upset with where we are as a society, especially in the United States, where it's like, oh, okay, so basically I can't even afford an apartment of my own. And that's really sad because there's no structural housing shortage. And I've actually shown that for individual markets, even at a national level. We are in, just like many developed countries, it's a pro inflationary regime. So follow the money, like who owns what, and how many of those people or households exist in the United States. Oh, okay, well then of course those policies are going to cater to those individual groups, and if that causes some like extreme sort of divide along the way, well, so be it. That's where we're sort of sacrificing things to, we'll call it for the greater good at this point, but that's just so far like removed from reality. It's just kind of sad. So let me explain this visual we're looking at here. The three similarly colored charts are the population by 5-year age groups for the United States, and this is the latest projection, all the way to 2100. The legend for all three of those is right here, and I like to show it this way versus those individual years that you'll see on the census website of those various demographic trees, because I just find that this conveys much more information. So, look, as I've made a note up here, the under 25 group is in blue, 25 to 54 is in green, 55 plus, we'll think of that as like the silver tsunami or silver wave, is in gray. And the darker respective color saturation just indicates relatively older age. So what happens is, uh, really, we're just getting older. I mean, I made that point from the outset. And in the United States, I would say like 20 some odd years ago, roughly 20% of our population was over the age of 55. Now it's closer to 30, and it's only expected to get worse from here. And what that ultimately does is it chokes off really the younger generation's ability to really grow and have kids, especially when things are extremely unaffordable, which they are now, as you can see in something like the birth rate, which is basically projected to just decline over time. Uh, Look, we don't really have, as growth is slowing, so right, it's slowing. Uh, that flows through to something like GDP and the quality of GDP and even the quality of the jobs market. So things may still be growing, but is it really growing in a meaningful and quality way? And with all this deficit spending, I think one could argue very reasonably that absolutely not. I mean, the natural path when you don't have like organic growth, from a population standpoint, which ultimately flows through to something like GDP, you do sort of lean into these pro inflationary regimes. And it's been really at the expense of our youth and oftentimes really the middle class. And so um, it just kind of is what it is. But I'm sick and tired of all of this narrative that's being sort of injected into this whole equation when in reality, just go straight to the source. This is what it looks like. It's not great. So look, let's look at another developed country just so we can sort of compare to and see if that is actually the case. So what happens? This is Japan. As you can see, there's a growing share of old people that impacts birth rates. So ultimately, that's leading to an outright population decline that they're experiencing right now. And by the way, we actually stole the genius idea of kiwi from Japan. So look, we don't have anything remotely close to resembling, uh, you know, capitalism at this point in our country. It's all just driven by liquidity and flows, and it's really just kind of fucked up and sad. But better to know than not know is the way that I think about it. And look, I think if anybody follows me, my tiny little corner of the internet, I've been very critical of somebody like Bill Lee. And again, I don't care about politics. I care about the numbers because ultimately that's all that really matters. And the same trends, and I'll just go back to it for a second, that you're seeing in the United States are no different for the state of Tennessee. We have a quality population and jobs market problem where we're just really attracting people because of the perceived just, you know, enormous benefit of no state income tax, even though we have one of the highest sales tax in the country. And that's attracting certain, I would often say, like uber conservative people uh, who seem to think that, you know, John Wayne is the future. It's kind of insane. And on top of that, it's no different than what you see at a national level, where we just have, we're adding a lot of government and healthcare jobs. We don't have broad-based job growth across all these sectors. And I've been pointing that out for a while now. It's funny that Scott Bessent finally acknowledged that really, outside of something like healthcare, the private sector has been in a recession, despite the unemployment rate being where it is. So, and again, for all these grifters out there saying, hey, look, these are, 10, 20-year down the road problems. No, they're real problems right now. And the second that you start to see something, if you want to think about it in terms of the housing industry, household growth slowing, and you can observe that at a county level and even more granular than that, and I've looked at it, I've shown it, it is going to eventually lead to probably some sort of growth scare. But I think ultimately, the path is prices higher. I just think that there's probably going to be some bumps along the way because we have a very, very fragile economy, especially really the housing industry. And really, housing is kind of the economic cycle. I think people think that it's not as big of an issue this time, just from a lending standpoint, and that's the only lens in which they want to see this issue through. But we still have an enormous problem there. So yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. Bill, I'd love to hear your response on this, and if you'd like me to show this data for the state of Tennessee, I'd be more than happy to. But I'm tired of all these bullshitters, man. These are the numbers. Ignore everything else. Focus on the numbers. Okay, bye.